Welcome, everyone, to the VIA Knowledge Hub podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Trost, and I'm here with Dave Raley. If you have ever wondered how some leaders just get it, right? When it comes to modernizing big organizations, especially when it comes to tech, well, let me tell you about Dave Raley. This guy is the digital program manager at the Marine Corps Community Services. So you might hear it called MCCS. Totally transformed how Marines and their families get services, which is super cool. He pioneered something called Operation StormBreaker, which he is going to tell you about in just a moment. Why? He wanted to cut down on software development headaches, save money, and get critical missions done faster. So Dave, welcome. Really excited to dive a little bit deeper here.
Heidi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to a conversation about change.
Yeah. So I wanted to start us off with something a little different. So as you know, there are a lot of acronyms in government, and I thought it would be really fun to just do a rapid fire and have you explain what these acronyms mean in just one sentence. So are you ready?
I'm very guilty of feeding the acronym problem more broadly, so I'll do my best maybe to pay back a little.
I will say StormBreaker doesn't have an acronym. Do you refer to it with an acronym internally that we don't know about?
Yes, so I won't tell you about that, okay? So we'll just go with StormBreaker.
I can't wait to
Guilty as charged.
Okay. Okay, so let's have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to say the acronym, and you are going to explain it in a sentence, right? Plain language, everyone should be able to understand. Okay, ready? Right. Go. All right, we're going to start off with ATO.
Getting a system authorized to run in production in the government.
And what does that actually stand for?
Authorization to operate.
Awesome. That's a really good, succinct sentence. I love it. Okay, let's do another one. DevSecOps. Not quite an acronym. So I ruined the game already, but you know what I mean. Version.
We should have said DSO. Anyways, yes. So that stands for Development, Security, and Operations. In the commercial sector, that's DevOps typically, or Development Operations. And it really just means how do you synchronize the activities of doing development with security in mind and also doing continuous deployment.
Love it. What about RMF?
Risk Management Framework. That's essentially the security structure in which you evaluate systems to ensure that they're compliant and secure before production.
Awesome. That for some reason, RMF always gets me. I always have to think for a few seconds. What does that actually mean?
I know why, Heidi. Because people who do RMF don't typically think about managing risk.
Ooh, I feel like this is a hot take.
Yeah, and we're going to
tell me more.
Unpack. Okay, we'll do a little pause there. We'll talk a little bit deeper, I think, later in the conversation. But really, the focus of Risk Management Framework is how do you understand the true risk posture of whatever capability you're trying to deploy, and are you able to accept that, and what mitigations have you done? But it's really turned into mostly just a checklist compliance exercise, and that's actually part of what the root of the problem.
Excited to unpack that a little bit more as we continue on in the podcast. All right, last one, RAISE.
Rapid Assess Incorporate Software Engineering.
I didn't know this one before we talked about it. So yeah, excited to hear what the one-liner.
Well, and even to make it worse, Operation StormBreaker is an RPOC, a RAISE platform of choice. So it's two acronyms in one, even better.
Wow.
Buried together. So it's a certification process for a DevSecOps pipeline that allows you to release workloads into production with an authorization.
Nice. Awesome. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we can continue doing rapid fire. If you have one sentence answers to these, great. Awesome. But I wanted to kind of illustrate the pain point, right? We're going to have this story arc here, and we're going to start with the pain. So the pain, from what I understand and what we've talked about before, so for commercial teams, the ATO process, which you just defined, looks like a black hole. I'm building software. I'm a startup. I really it seems just like this magical thing that I have no idea, and I have to interpret and figure out on my own. So help me understand why should I not be deterred by this process?
So one of the reasons why you should be in my view, is because the way that you're feeling as a commercial entity or as a founder, as a startup trying to interface with the government, we in the government are feeling the same way.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Not with you guys, but with the actual process. So
yeah.
I believe that the RMF guidance and all of those things is fairly solid, but its implementation and the way that it's practiced is at best very poor. And it leaves a lot of these types of things. So many mission owners and teams across the department experience the same frustrations that you have of like, we don't know how to navigate this. As I mentioned, it's more of a compliance checklist type of approach. Then you just always go to a gatekeeper and they throw a bunch of, well, you can't do X at you, instead of looking at how they manage risk and understand what you should do. I think many programs, this will probably be a good way to give the insight. I think one of the biggest misnomers around the authorization or ATO process is this view that it's about a particular application and the underlying capability, and how do we look at it technically and say, is this thing secure enough to go into production? In reality, it's actually much more. It's more about where this application sits. So that's like taking a view of like, this application is the top of this teeny little slice all the way bottom to the server and the network and everything in between. And how can we show the authorizing official that we've got everything sorted out? And what happens is this becomes a wasted effort, in my view, of just trying to prove to the AO that you've got a comprehensive cyber program for your overall operating environment. What is the operational context? How mature is the team? What are the things you do? And much of what I'm speaking about is not technical. And so I think that's what's the problem. So then you have a single workload coming in and you're trying to look at it technically from an ATO perspective, when you're not looking at the operational context, the overall capability and team and platform, cyber program, incident response, and access management, and HR policies and background, all those things. Instead, you just try to reference a bunch of things and cobble it together. So part of the problem that the commercial vendors are running into is some of that ambiguity and lack of understanding from the mission owner who's trying to bring you in, because they don't actually have those answers. So you come in, you join up with them, and then they try to go get support, and they're not getting it because the teams are all fragmented and siloed, and it doesn't kind of work as a cohesive unit. One of the things Operation StormBreaker does differently to help get after that issue is we think about our entire enclave as a product. We operate it as a product with a single cohesive team operating all the aspects from cybersecurity, infrastructure, networking, all things, and providing that as a service to the mission owner. When the mission owner comes in, they're inheriting the enclave that's operating in a very mature way. They're not trying to prove this little narrow slice of this.
That's so cool. And so you've said you've proven deployments in 15 minutes. What made that possible?
So the Raise platform of choice, that's specifically what it's designed for. In the commercial sector, I'm sure you're familiar with, there is the whole CI/CD pipeline. Commercial companies have been doing, this is a lot of what we're sharing today is not that groundbreaking in the sense that commercial sector has been doing this for a long time. The large tech companies deploy hundreds, if not thousands, in some cases, of patches and builds a day, untouched by human hands, through their very robust and very mature pipelines. Well, we have a mature pipeline. In the department, there had to be a certification to say, yes, we agree it's acting at that behavior. There's 8 gates in the pipeline that are required for the Raise certification. We went through that certification, and when I say 15 minutes, it takes a build 15 minutes to go through our pipeline. And supposing that the engineers have remediated any vulnerabilities and it's passes and gets a green check all on that pipeline, it can be released into production on the authority of the information security systems or information system security manager. It doesn't go to the AO for an authorization. There is no ATO package. There isn't the regular 12 to 18 months after, which is really, well, that's the difference we're talking about. If you don't have that certification, you could have the DevOps pipeline operating like I've described, but still have to go spend 12 to 18 months to get it released into production. We can release it into production within a few minutes after going through the pipeline, because the AO's delegated authority based on the maturity of our platform, that we are meeting all of the RMF requirements in that 15 minutes through the various processes and steps that we have that allows us to release it into production. So truly, we're getting continuous authorized containers into production in 15 minutes.
Talk a little bit about blowing up RMF. I thought that was interesting for folks who haven't ever heard that.
Katie Arrington has been speaking about that pretty broadly. She's the Department of Legal CIO, at least acting in the duties there right now. And that's one of the things she's been talking about. She's also been talking about Swift software. And really that hacks two problems, which is the same two problems that we built StormBreaker to solve. Which is you have this legacy or a waterfall approach to development and acquisition, and then you have these legacy compliance practices. And those are choking the life out of velocity and delivering capability because you're taking 4 to 5 years before you can get in production. So if you can do DevOps and truly have teams engaged in building MVPs and having the right platforms and capability and expertise and culture to do that, you also need to provide with the ability to go in production as quickly as possible. So blowing up RMF means we're no longer treating it as a checklist 12 to 18 months paperwork process. And in the case of using a pipeline like we have, you actually look way deeper into a container with the tooling that we have that allows you to actually assess true vulnerabilities and deal with those more so than the traditional process. Because the traditional process is like you scan stuff, and as long as the scans aren't more than 30 days and
right.
you put all this paperwork and artifacts together that are very stale. They take many months to put together, whereas we're doing an assessment in 15 minutes. So we truly understand at that moment what the risk posture is. So when you say blow up RMF, we're moving from a document-centric point-in-time snapshot-based thing that's mostly invalid the day that it's approved, really, from a security perspective, into a real-time data-centric analysis. We're running the containers back to the software factory every night to make sure it's still good. Like that's light years further from a security perspective than the traditional ATO process.
Yeah, it's really exciting to hear you talk about things that we've been talking about in the cybersecurity industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need point in time, looking at these different frameworks and just getting some sort of paper-based, artifact is just, it's silly.
Sadly, you're 100% on the mark. But beyond being silly, it's extraordinarily costly.
Yeah.
And it has huge mission impact. So I'm going to throw a couple numbers at you. I estimated based on my own analysis, my own organization, when I was stuck in some of the same places, that it's at least $100,000 per month of delay during the ATO process that it's costing every government organization. There's 5,500 ATO packages across the department. If you conservatively say it's $1 million per ATO, that's every 3 years, at least $5.5 billion. It's probably much higher. That's just the ATO process. That doesn't account for degraded mission capability or lost business outcomes. Furthermore, when you think in terms of time, that's 8,200 years lost in mission impact every 3 years. 8,200. So there's huge implications here. And we think in terms of orders of magnitude faster. I'm talking 15 minutes comparing to 18 months. We can't get 10% better or 20%, even 50%. It's not enough. Because of the world we're living in, right? And in order to either deter aggression or win if we're in conflict, it's going to mean that we have to compress those cycle times of delivery inside of more of like minutes versus 4 or 5 years, right? Like we can't afford that.
We kind of both share a really deep passion about, and that's, human-centered design or human-centered security. Like being in the midst of the people and like kind of understanding what their processes are, their systems are, how they collaborate, like really understanding like the total system, including the people involved in it. So you did this with within the Marines, and I'm curious like how it influenced or how it changed how you approached StormBreaker.
Prior to my role leading digital transformation in my own organization, I stood up and did innovation. And part of what I did from an innovation perspective was doing a lot of ethnographic research. For those who are not familiar with that term, and that's not an acronym, it really means just truly sitting down with a subject person and understanding, not a survey of like, tell me why you like X, Y, and Z, but truly understanding the overall context of what that person's life is like and what things are, and then how they interact and interface with different things. So I did that and led a team doing those types of things for several years with Marines in particular to help understand Marine life and what were the pain points and what were the motivations and things like that. So we could understand from our organization's perspective, how could we serve those Marines better? And one of the key points, in my view, to human-centered design is really understanding pain points, but also jobs to be done. And so that has been a very formative thought framework for me as I've moved through my career and transitioned from kind of that innovation into digital transformation. And I think probably the way that I would describe it most succinctly, this is interesting, it's really about outcomes.
Yeah.
And so I think so often everyone gets wrapped up in how are we doing a particular thing, or what technology is it, et cetera, and we lose sight of the outcome. I'll go back to a statement I made a few minutes ago. What should we care about? Well, Kubernetes and AWS and, CI/CD and virtual. No, I actually don't really care about any of that. I care about, did you get the workload into production? Is it secure and resilient? And at what speed did you do that? Talk about the speed of relevance. We talk about that all the time in the department. It is so critical. And I think there's too many people who are willing to have pedantic arguments around how you did something and what tool you should use and what technology you should use. And you lose sight of, we're trying to get something into production. Everything should be kind of sacrificed that. I also see so much solutioning happening. And that's another critical factor of human-centered design is you don't try to solution too early, right? You're trying to truly understand what the pain is, what the job is to be done, and that kind of translates loosely into what outcome are you trying to achieve. And then there's many ways to get there. And typically that unfolds really fast and it's not hard to do. So a lot of the culture change I've been pushing with my own organization has really been around that. I was super encouraged. Just a few minutes ago, a mission owner came up to me and we were having a conversation about some issues we were having with workload, got that sorted out. And he was like, I'm trying to get to this outcome. I was like, yes. You're asking me about outcomes. You can solve outcomes because that's actually pretty simple.
Yeah, because you understand the problem, right? Like once you wrap your head around the true problem, the essence of the problem, then you can go about solving for it.
But so often we don't define the problem, so we're trying to potentially fix the wrong thing or architecting it incorrectly.
That's why we have this compliance problem. That's why we have this box checking problem.
Yes, because we're not actually looking at the outcome. We're like, hey, if I follow this procedure, all the good things will result. No, they won't. No, they won't.
That's so cool. That's absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Really, really insightful and inspirational. So
I get fired up about it too.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here, right? I totally agree. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about so VIA learned about StormBreaker. They saw it as an opportunity to expedite a prototype to market. To me, this highlights the need for software teams to be creative about asking the right questions, right? I don't know exactly what the conversation was, but I essentially, it probably was something along the lines of, hey, this looks like a solution to, this outcome that we've defined of getting this prototype to market. Could this be something that we leverage? And it turns out, yes, we can. So my question to you is I'm new to this process. I don't know what questions to ask. I'm a founder. I'm an engineer. What is the list of questions that we should be asking as a software team?
So I'm going to give you a one sentence answer to that.
Okay.
The answer is, how are you getting me to production, mission owner? That's the question, because underneath all of that is the hosting and the authorization and what is the path and what are the contract implications and the timing and everything else.
And just to unpack what, that main question that you pose is how are we getting to production? So how are we actually what is the plan for us to get this into production? And it sounds like asking that question maybe will highlight I'm not really sure how that's going to pan out. And then you can start asking some additional questions and then explore what your options are. Okay.
Right on.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you an example. If you go to a mission owner and say, what's the path to production? Or you didn't ask that question, you're going to get the contract awarded as an example. And then you're going to be let's go to work. Where am I hosting this thing? They'd be well, we'll get in line to whoever provides us our infrastructure. Okay, well, we got all the hosting done. We install the apps running. Okay, how are we going to get authorized? I'm going to go see if I can find some, you know what I mean? That's what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Or you get into that other terrible cycle that I mentioned early on, which was, you got to go get just a PA.
Define what that means. I think we missed defining that before. Yeah.
So I said it, but I'll define what it means in layman's terms. So there's two pieces. So in the federal government in general, getting a FedRAMP authorization essentially means that the underlying capability and even the application itself goes through a robust ATO process, essentially, or an authorization process, that the commercial provider gets a third party to come in and assess all their security controls and all their practices and their security operations to the degree that GSA, through that FedRAMP process, is able to look at a software, SaaS, software as a service capability, and say, yes, I trust that this thing is meeting all the requirements that are required for the government. So there's a FedRAMP, and then there's a low, medium, and high, or moderate and high, and those things just being the number of security controls and what kind of data you can have in your environment, et cetera. Furthermore, DISA, which represents the Department of Defense, they provide another what they call provisional authority to operate. And then they do it at a certain impact level. Again, impact level is similar in that it's what kind of controls and what kind of data can be in that environment. So the whole DISA provisional authority to operate on top of a FedRAMP authorization is the combination you need. So when you go to an authorizing official and you say, here's the operational context and the data I want to use in this application, and everything below that, the application and all that, is managed by this FedRAMP high DISA provisional authority. So the reason provisional authority to operate is mentioned there is it allows the AO to give you an authorization based on that, but you don't have one granted. So I think that's a misnomer. Even though it says provisional authority to operate, like, oh, we've got this pay, we're fine. No, still got to get an ATO.
Well, I think it just illustrates kind of like the broader point. And one of the reasons that we started VIA Knowledge Hub in the first place is it is challenging to wrap your head around all of this stuff. And if you're new to it, I mean, frankly, even if you're not new to it, right? It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It might not be something that you've encountered before, wrapping your head around the acronyms and then the different processes. And it's like, if you do this or you work with this organization, like, with this service, that it's going to be slightly different. And yeah, it's a lot.
This is going to be strange when I say it, but we promised each other we'd have fun today. As somebody who is very new to the DoD technology space, only a matter of 4 years, I actually have finding an advantage in not having been embedded in this for so many years, because I can think a little bit more from that human-centered design outcome-based perspective. And there's folks that I've run into across in my journeys that have deep 30, 40-year experience, but because it's so deep and narrow, sometimes it's hard for them to see around some of the things. So it's been something that's been a unique part of my maturity through my career that's allowed me to see some things and help drive change. So.
Yeah, looking at through like a newbie's eyes. You can start asking why. Why does it have to be this way? All right, last segment here. Another injecting a little bit of fun. I want to do this rapid fire finish the sentence. So I'm going to pose a few sentences to you, and I just want you to quickly finish them with a few words.
Okay.
I'll give you 1 to 3 words.
Okay, 1 to 3 words.
Okay. So human-centered design means
looking at things from an outcome perspective.
Love it. Okay. The best national security software is
resilient and secure.
Nod to resiliency. One of my favorite words. The hardest part about building software for national security is
not understanding how to do it.
Never having met Dave before, because once you meet him, your problems are solved.
Yeah, not quite, but okay.
In 5 years, national security software will look like
near instantaneous deployment at scale.
Awesome. All right, last one. If you were to change the current ATO, national security authorization process, what would that look like?
I think that it shifts from a point-in-time snapshot-based paperwork, documents, checklist-centric drill into a real-time data-centric analysis. I'm going to tell you a dream I have. I would love to see that, as an example, the DoD CIO can log into a dashboard and look at the real-time risk posture of every system and network across the department, just like that. I think it's technically feasible. There's a ton of culture and funding and all kinds of stuff mashed in there that's going to make that difficult, but it's technically feasible. So I'd love to see that. And related to that, I think this is the problem right now, and this is a little bit of a hot button what I'm going to say, but right now we sacrifice mission outcomes and true security on the altar of compliance every day. That's what this entire discussion has been about.
Yeah.
Largely,
Yeah.
right. And so how do you rebuild or rebalance and harmonize? Because yes, you want compliance. Why? Because compliance is trying to ensure that you're meeting those security requirements balanced with mission outcomes. We should not prioritizing compliance over security and mission. And in order to shift into what I just mentioned, as far as that kind of real-time thing that gets you into that posture where you're actually looking at security outcomes and mission outcomes and balance, and your compliance is a byproduct of that, not the ultra in which you're trying to achieve everything. And interestingly, the same goes for policy. I see too many people looking and saying the policy is the achievement. If we can meet whatever the policy and the guidance, we've achieved something. No, policy and guidance should be serving the mission.
One of the things that I've noticed is that I think compliance is almost perceived as, like, checking the box compliance is almost perceived as easier than truly thinking about the risks, truly thinking about what would make us more resilient, right? Like that's like it's like an exercise, right? It's a thought exercise.
I've had this conversation with my security team like almost every week, at least.
Really?
Like, yes, because you try to substitute like truly thoughtfully thinking about what the security postures are and logically walking through. Going way back to the beginning of the podcast when I talked about the operational containment and maturity, this was talking about like you're not thinking of this like in an abstract way. And I think that's what the checklists do, is it's more of an abstract. Well, if we just, and it's more comfortable, right? If I just robotically follow this checklist, well, okay, let's just go get AI to do that part. But we need humans in the loop thinking about actual operational environment, what's happening, et cetera. So you're right on. You're right on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you say, like, I do think that there are, like, checklists can be amazing, right? Like I use checklists all the time. And like
a pilot should have a checklist.
A pilot should have a checklist for sure. So, you know, but it's like, it's balancing that critical thinking of like, what is actually going to improve security outcomes? What is ultimately going to achieve the mission, right? The mission outcomes, what will ultimately make us resilient. And that is like the much, much harder piece. But what I wanted to say about what you're doing with StormBreaker is that you are making, not that you don't have to go through the thought exercise, you do, but you're making it easier to almost like to implement it, right? Like, and to go faster.
We're abstracting away from the mission owners, all of that stuff underneath intentionally, and saying, we know how to do this. We're doing it really well. We will do this for you. You focus on the thing that you're unique at, which is your particular workload via science. You're really great at doing some really cool stuff around Slam AI and so all these other things. Go do that, and we will support your workloads. You don't have to become infrastructure and RMF experts. That's the point.
Love that. I think that was a perfect end to the podcast. Dave, this has been so great. I'm just blown away by it.
Had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
thank you for including me in your podcast.
Of course.
Hopefully I'll be back.
Yes, we love repeat guests. Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Like, just awesome stuff that you've been working on. You have a link for folks to learn more. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So stay tuned, everyone, and look at those show notes. Thank you again, Dave.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks for listening to the VIA Knowledge Hub podcast. If you know someone who might like this episode, we would love for you to share it. And if you're building for the DoD, you probably wrestled with access challenges, and we've totally been there. See how VIA solved for it, and you can even test out VIA's Zero Trust Fabric free at solvevia.com/ZTF-platform.